Good afternoon, everyone. I'm live twice today. So welcome, Carleen. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm awesome, but let me make sure I don't mess up my other posts here. Oh, I think I already messed it up. I think I screwed up my Instagram already.
Oh no,
All right. Well, maybe not. Let's see. All right. So it's our last live together of 2024.
it's December. How did that happen?
I don't know. This year went so fast, but this is a good topic. And I was live this morning with Megan Dolly, my virtual
hmm
CFO, and we
hmm
talked about deciding on how you're going to use your cash and making decisions for your cash for next year.
hmm
But I should have done these in reverse. Tell us how we close out and wrap up our books for 2024, and give us some items that we can make sure we don't miss.
Right. So no one wants to go into the new year with a bunch of open items. It's just very stressful. But at the same time, no one wants to spend their Christmas holiday thinking about their books. But I do
Correct.
caution them to say take some time over this next couple of weeks to actually just lay eyes on your bookkeeping, especially if you're doing it yourself, because you want to avoid that last minute stress and hopefully be able to give your tax preparer some information that's going to make their lives easier and get your taxes done a lot faster. If you have, so we're going to talk about this in two ways. First is we're going to talk about bookkeeping. If you have bookkeeping, these are the things that you would need to do for the end of the year. So you want to make sure that you are reconciling every bank account, every credit card account. If you don't know what I mean by reconciling, I don't mean just looking at it going, yep, that looks right. There is a process in QuickBooks
Mhm.
for reconciling. If you go to our YouTube, C2 Accounting's YouTube channel, we have a video on how to reconcile. So make sure that you go through the process. Review any unpaid client invoices because sometimes you have invoices, especially if you're using like design files or Bidoma that you may have closed out in the software, but it never translated over to QuickBooks, and so there's a discrepancy. So just make sure that you double check both systems and see if there's anything that's not going to get paid that you should go ahead and just close out. So that's off the books. Um, and vice versa, if you have any outstanding bills from vendors that need to be paid by the end of the year, make sure you do that. If paying them by the end of the year is not important, then conserve your cash and wait until next year. But understanding the impact that's going to have on your taxable income, right? So if you're trying to reduce that taxable income, go ahead and pay it this year. If that's not important to you, you may can delay it for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Um, Categorize if you can. Like this, today's the 18th. If you can get half of your December books done and get it categorized, then in January you only have 2 weeks to do and you're done. Like that would be such a breather for most people to
Yes.
take, right? So take the time to go ahead and categorize those remaining outstanding transactions. And then you can kind of run some preliminary profit and loss reports and see where the business stands as of today. And that will give you a good idea as to probably where you would end up, at the end of the year.
Okay.
One of the things I definitely want to caution people about, let's say you're about to invoice a client for a big job,
Yeah.
$50,000, $100,000. Exciting, right? You date the invoice for December 30th, they pay you, and you're not going to go into procurement until next year. Well, here's two things that's going to happen. One, that's taxable income this year if you get paid this year, but you don't have any expenses to offset it, so you're probably going to increase your tax liability, so keep that in mind.
Mm.
Yes.
So you're
And
taking in a big check for furnishings that you're not purchasing till January. This is going to show as an additional income.
income in 2024,
But
but
what
all
can
the
you do
expense.
about that? I mean, you can't be holding people's checks for 3, 4, 5 weeks. I mean,
Oh, no, 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 no. I mean, I'm saying if it's the end of the month, if it's the last couple of days of the year,
gotcha.
I would go ahead and do it for January 1st, just
Yes.
because that way you're not. What you don't want to do is increase your tax liability falsely, and then you're paying taxes on income when next year you're going to have a bunch of expenses as you start
That go
purchasing
against
furniture.
it.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And that also goes with sales taxes because some states, I would say probably, maybe 40, 50% of the states actually charge sales taxes on an accrual basis, which means when you get the invoice, whether the client has paid or not, you have to pay sales taxes on it. So same thing. don't date an invoice for December 30th, 25th, 26th, if you know they're not going to pay until January. Just date it for January to save yourself the taxes as sales taxes that you haven't even collected, you now have to pay, or income taxes. So,
Right.
so think
Okay.
about those kinds of things.
Okay.
Um, Chart of accounts. So if you don't know what a chart of accounts is in QuickBooks, it's just a listing of all the accounts, all of your bank accounts, all the different expense categories. Spend some time going through that to clean it up, because sometimes throughout the year you may add things that you may not have needed, and it just makes it easier for you to start doing some sort of review and analysis if that's clean. And then make sure you at least touch bases with your CPA to see if there's anything that they're going to need that you need to make sure that you have. Because once January rolls around, it's it's on for them. They're busy, it's hard to reach
Mhm.
them. So if you can poke them down, or whisper in their ear to see what is it that they may need from you, go ahead and get that ready. So those are the bookkeeping things that people should be
Okay.
doing. All right. So
Okay.
that now we're going to shift gears. We're going to talk about just general year-end tax preparation. Now, where we're coming from our perspective is as a bookkeeper, making sure our clients are ready for tax prep, because we're not a tax firm. So if you're not, especially a lot of what I'm going to say next is uh, easier done if you have books like QuickBooks. But if you don't, obviously it still needs to be done. So make sure you gather all of your income. If you're not using QuickBooks, hopefully your income is in like Mydoma or Design Files. If you don't have that, hopefully there's a spreadsheet. If you don't have that, hopefully you have copies of your invoices.
And if
But
you
make
don't have
sure
any of that, get on Nancy's calendar because you need coaching.
exactly
Okay.
right. So hopefully, so we want to make sure we have all of our income.
Yeah.
But that also includes any 1099s that you may receive from clients, or that you have done work for, whatever it's for. Any kind of like 1099Ks. So if you are collecting credit cards, if you're getting payments via credit cards, those processing companies give you a form called a 1099K. Make sure you're gathering all that stuff. Like, just keep it all digitally or in a folder so that you have it in one place. So we want to document our income. Two, we want to make sure we have all of our expenses documented. Even for people who have QuickBooks, I find that sometimes they're paying with a personal card over here,
I
or
know.
they're using a Zelle over here, or PayPal over there that's not connected to QuickBooks. So what you're doing is you're missing out on valuable business expense deductions when you do that. So if you are doing that, making sure that you're gathering all those payments that you've made. I had a client last year where she ended up having to spend, now she's a bookkeeping client. She knows better, but she was, doing things outside of QuickBooks, and ended up having to go through all of her credit card statements and make a spreadsheet of all these payments that she made, so
Oh,
that we can then go back and put them in QuickBooks, so for her tax account. And so those are the kind of things that you want to hopefully avoid by just doing everything with a business account. But life happens. I understand. Just make sure you have a way of capturing all of that, so you're just not paying more in taxes than you have to.
okay.
Employee and contractor records. If you have employees, you should be using payroll software. So hopefully you are, and that all of the payroll taxes are being documented. If you're paying contractors, 1099s, making sure that you know who you paid, how much you paid, get a W-9 from them, because those 1099s are due January 31st. That's no time. Once January rolls around, everything needs to be done. So prep
Yes.
now if you don't have that ready. Um, Estimated taxes. So if you made estimated taxes in 2024, which hopefully you did, that you have record of those so that you get credit for those when your tax
Estimated income tax.
estimated income tax. So you
Mhm.
paid the state or you paid the federal government. You're like, I'm going to pay 5,000 this quarter because I know I'm going to owe at the end of the year. Make sure that you're tracking those, because obviously you want to get credit for that. So it reduces your tax liability at the end of the year.
Can we just
Um,
go into that for a second? Because I want
sure.
people to understand. So like I get an email, I get a piece of mail that says how much my projected quarterly sales tax will be, my income tax will be for next year. You're my bookkeeper. I send it to you. You then set it up where I'm paying my projected income tax quarterly. And then at the end of the year, if I've overpaid or underpaid, it gets
to get a refund.
reconciled.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of times it's going to be your tax accountant who's going to set that up
Okay.
because usually they're the ones who are involved. But if you have a bookkeeper who's doing maybe bill payment for you or they have access to pay bills on your behalf, then maybe they could do it as well. But yes, you're correct. I'm always of the adage where I don't like to owe. I'd rather
I
overpay
don't
even just a
either.
little bit and
Yeah,
then than to owe. Because what happens is when you underpay, it's not just the taxes that you owe, it's the interest and the penalties for not paying on time that
correct.
becomes an issue.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, if you have any loans, make sure that those are reconciled by the end of the year because when you borrow money, the money that you borrow is not income. The money that you pay back is not an expense, but the interest that you pay on that loan is an expense. So making sure that you're recording the interest that you paid in 2024 somewhere, hopefully QuickBooks, but if not, at least on your spreadsheet so that you get credit for that and reduces your taxable income.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. A lot of people forget about the interest that you pay. That's tax deduction, and people are always wondering, are there any secret hidden tax deductions? And I'm like, yeah, for us normal people, not really, but that is one that you may overlook. That if you
Yes.
borrow money, you pay interest. That you can write that
Deductible.
off.
Okay.
Exactly. So yeah, hopefully you're using QuickBooks, but at the bare minimum, do some sort of digital organization just to kind of keep everything easily accessible because it's so much better to just hand something over to your tax professional as opposed to having to, physically give a bunch of paper or pull things together at the last second.
Yes. All right. So here's what we know happens. People who don't have QuickBooks or have QuickBooks and don't have a bookkeeper and haven't been keeping up on their bookkeeping are starting to get into extreme anxiety right now because they know it's coming, that they're going to have to go
Yes.
figure this stuff out, figure out if they're not using QuickBooks, where all their numbers are and put it together. And if they're using QuickBooks, making sure they've done their reconciliations, they're matching, and that's up to date.
Hmm.
And now they go, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's just too much. Let me call Carleen right now, the end of the year, and get her to become my bookkeeper. What happens?
Yeah, so while we are taking on new clients, we are not taking on any new projects until the beginning of the year because it's 2 weeks left in the year. We are actually booked solid with cleanup work because, just like you said, everyone's panicking right now.
Yep.
But we are still taking complimentary consultations. We can discuss it. We can do a diagnostic review so we can see what needs to be done on your books and then
Okay.
make a plan to get those cleaned up. Will it be in January? Probably not. More like February. So we're going to really be able to finish those because we have 1099s due in January. And that really takes our focus a lot. But yeah, we could definitely take on new clients. We want people to not feel anxiety. We want to make the process as simple and as easy as possible.
Which you definitely do. And I know you work with designers who have all different types of software. So, or don't use any software at
Oh,
all at
yeah.
this point, right? So
Hmm.
if you're struggling with keeping up with your books as an interior designer, please contact C2 Accounting and get on Carleen's calendar so she can talk you through what the process is going to look like to clean up your books, get them up to date, and then keep them going the right way so that this
Exactly.
does not happen to you next year.
Exactly. Let's go into 2025 with a plan to end 2025 on a positive note.
All right. Anything else that we missed?
I don't think so. The only other thing I will say is on our website, if you go to C2 Accounting, C2-accounting.com, which is somewhere in the body of this video here, it
Yeah.
will actually have at the very top a download our checklist, which tells you what you should be doing every day, every week, every month, every quarter, and every year to keep your books straight for yourself.
Yes. So that's in the description of this live on Facebook. So, and on YouTube. So if you're watching on Instagram, you can go over to one of those channels in order to get that link or go to C2 Accounting and get that downloadable worksheet. That is a really helpful sheet. It really does tell you what do you have to make sure your calendar for every month related to your accounting, quarterly, yearly, end of year. It's really, really helpful. So everyone can grab that and then calendar it out or get on Colleen's calendar and hire them to do it for you.
We'd
For
love
the new
to
year. For the
for
new
the new
year.
year.
For the new year. So, all right. Well, go have a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. And we will see you in the new year to keep giving us tips on how to keep our books clean and working for us.
Yes. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks. See you
Bye-bye.
next time. Bye, everyone.